Hi, welcome to Feast on Gluten-Free. If you are watching this video, you are probably like me, someone who loves a good fried chicken. But since going gluten-free, I can no longer run to KFC and grab some. So after a bit of experimenting, I have come up with this beautiful recipe that not only tastes very similar to KFC, but is way healthier as it is oil-free. I want to share this recipe with you so that you guys can go ahead and have your fried chicken without feeling guilty. For this recipe, I have 4 thighs and 4 drumsticks without the skin because I'm baking this for my family and we don't want all that fat. And trust me, they taste great and come out quite crispy even without the skin. The first step towards a juicy, flavorful fried chicken is bathing the meat in a good marinade. And here's the good news, you don't need any buttermilk. This recipe is so simple that you will find most of the ingredients in your pantry. So to marinate the chicken, I have taken a Ziploc bag, as I prefer not to get my hands dirty. To this bag, add 1 cup of plain yogurt. I have taken non-fat Greek yogurt. Next, add a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. Mustard adds a great flavor to the meat, and the yogurt and the mustard together tenderizes the meat. For the rest of the seasonings, I have added half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. Now you can add or subtract the seasonings to your liking. Now to the marinade, I'm also adding a teaspoon of dried thyme. I'm just going to gently crush it before it goes into the bag. If you do not like thyme, feel free to use your choice of herbs. And lastly, a little bit of crushed black pepper. Place all the pieces of chicken into the bag. Seal the bag and shake it nicely till our chicken is fully coated in the marinade. Leave the bag in the fridge overnight. This not only helps to tenderize the meat, but also helps to infuse all the good flavor from the seasonings into the meat. But if you're too eager to have your fried chicken and cannot wait that long, leave it marinated at least for 2 hours. To make the breading, I have taken some cornflakes. I really like that crunch from the cornflakes. To crush them like breadcrumbs, I like to simply put them in a Ziploc bag and use a rolling pin rather than using a food processor. This way, I can make sure that the cornflakes aren't ground too fine. For the amount of meat I'm using here, I need 1.5 cups of crushed cornflakes. To the cornflakes, I'm adding half a teaspoon of turmeric. Now this is completely optional. This will just give a brighter color to the breading. And then a pinch of salt and give it a good mix. Our next step here is to make a batter to dredge our chicken. Since our recipe is gluten-free, we cannot use regular flour. So I'm using a tablespoon of cornstarch, 3 tablespoons of gluten-free brown rice flour. I find the brown rice flour adds to the crispiness of this fried chicken. And also here is a secret ingredient, a teaspoon of baking powder. This will keep the coating nice and crispy and light when it comes out. Now make a smooth batter by adding a little bit of water at a time. The batter shouldn't be too runny nor too thick, just thick enough to form a light coating around the chicken. Before you start breading, to make the process fast and easy, have your chicken, the wet batter and dry crumbs and the baking tray all close by like in an assembly line. And here is a tip. Always use a parchment paper to line the tray when you make your oven fried chicken. Because otherwise the breading will pull off the chicken when you try to remove it out of the tray. I have tried to bake them on a rack, but the best results were always on a parchment paper. Another thing to keep in mind while breading is to use one hand for wet ingredients and the other hand for dry ingredients. This will avoid your fingers from getting more breading on them than the food itself. Preheat the oven to 375 and start breading by drenching the chicken pieces one by one in the batter. Let the excess drip off. Now coat it nicely with the crumbs and set it aside on the baking tray lined with parchment paper. You can also use a fork to bread the crumbs, but I just prefer to use my hands. I find that it's easier. Once you have them all breaded, bake it at 375 for 20 minutes on one side, then flip them and bake for another 15 minutes. Looks like my oven fried chicken is all done. Yes, it sounds crispy, and you can also see it has nicely cooked on both sides and has a golden brown color. These oven fried chicken are best when served hot and crispy right out of the oven. Now the big moment of taste testing. As you can see, the inside is quite juicy and tender. The crust is quite crispy and the chicken juicy and flavorful. I'm never going back to the deep fried version ever again. Try this out this weekend, and if you like my recipe, please comment below and don't forget to subscribe. All the ingredients and measurements are in the description box below. Have a nice weekend, guys.